Welcome back to our videos for our term project for A Place to Honor. Today we'll be talking about Phase 3, the concept board. Please remember that these videos are explanations of the various phases of your term project. Note that you will be held accountable for all of the requirements in the written handout provided on Blackboard in Teams. It is really important that you read it carefully. So, let's get started. Having completed the precedent studies and now spent some time with your character milling around in your head, you are probably starting to get some general ideas about the characteristics of the space that you will design. We now want to bring some of those ideas into words, those characteristics, and bring those words into a visual form. A concept board is an effective method to turn abstract ideas into visual imagery. Once complete, and if done well, the board can start to emote an atmosphere and identify a design language like forms, a color palette, lighting that can guide you in the design phase. But before we go on, let's step back just a bit. We want to begin with our words. So, first thing that you want to do in the development of a concept board is to start listing words that could describe your finished space. These will likely come from your character and your research. So here I just have two columns. These words are character driven, meaning they are words that relate to Athena Justice. She's a protector. She has the power of lightning. She is a powerful individual. She also is humble in that she gives of herself. You know, she is the healer. And this notion of being exalted, like a superhero or kind of a godlike figure might be. All right, so these are some words that help me describe her. You will do the same thing. And you can just list as many as you want here. You want a number of them because the more you have, the more you will be able to explore. Now, these words are more precedent driven. So after having looked at all of these different memorials or temples or shrines, I start to get a sense that this space probably needs to be meditative. There might be some sense of directed light, maybe to shine on a statue or a figure. It's probably quiet. It probably needs a sense of permanence, right? Based on its materiality. I don't want it to feel like it's going to be ephemeral and just fly away. Now, these are just words from my study. It doesn't mean that your study reveals all of these, okay? This is just an example going through my process. Now, after you do this and write all of your words, if you go back and you see a word that appears on your list that does not emanate from either your character or your precedent, then you need to question why it is there and if it is truly an important trait. Because you don't want to pull something in from left field that's just maybe a personal desire, like I want my temple to be this. And yet there's no real reason for it. So you want to kind of keep yourself in check and make sure that your words relate to your character or precedent. So let's choose one of those words. We'll start with protector. All right. Now, protector doesn't really seem to be a word that evokes a lot of kind of descriptive imagery for an interior. It is one of the main traits for my character, so it is important. She is a superhero that protects people after all. But I need to turn this into something that's more friendly, into something that's more descriptive for the eventual space. So, what are some other words that start to move us into the built environment? This will take some wordsmithing, or essentially asking yourself some questions. So, to start with, protector, you could also use the word to protect. And to protect is to make someone feel safe. Okay, so when do I feel safe? What is that like? What are those moments like? Perhaps it's when a parent, gives you a hug when I'm scared, right? They come and embrace you, and I feel that that enclosure, that warmth, okay, that relationship with another person. Same thing could be said for a blanket. Maybe I'm watching a scary movie and I'm kind of hiding behind my blankets. I'm seeking that shelter. I'm seeking that enclosure. So as you're talking through that, you're seeing that some other words are starting to come to the surface, like being embraced, wrapped, encircled. This starts to speak to enclosure, which is the very definition of an interior. And these words are also leading to the vision of a soft form. They're all organic. The hug feels organic. The blanket is organic. I'm not dealing with some hard geometries in these words. They're kind of emoting a certain type of feeling and language. And this is really important. So now we have some very interesting words to start searching for images. Now, the first one, I just thought I will start with the word protect. I'm just curious to see what's going to come up. I didn't really have high expectations here, but I was going to do it anyway. So I typed protect into a Google search for images, and this one popped up for obvious reasons. But it didn't fit the direction that I kind of am going for. Now, this is an important point. You're going to have to interpret every image that you look at. Imagery, visual imagery, has embedded messages. There are certain things that we kind of can all agree upon when we look at certain images. So, for example, this one's great. I even have practically a superhero with a shield here. Such a connection, with my superhero who is a protector. But a couple of things really don't fit with me when I'm looking at this image. One is the color palette. This bright sky blue and these pinks and reds are a very kind of happy, almost gleeful color palette. And to me, that's kind of not in my head about where my space is going, especially since I have words like meditative, quiet, powerful on my list. The other thing that concerned me is this is an image of someone protecting themselves, right? They're not protecting other people. We don't see any other people. And so to me, that's not the right message. This isn't about a person who's protecting their individual self, because that seems almost selfish in a way. She is here to protect other people. So I, excuse me, I kept scrolling to see if anything else caught my eye. Wow, what a powerful image this is. It really started to speak to me on a couple of levels. It's dynamic. It shows so much energy and power, which is really emphasizes one of Athena Justice's traits. She is a very powerful character, as she appears to stop, so easily this force that's coming at her, right? So I could have used this, and may use some component in the end, because there is something about this energy this image that is connecting with me, but it just felt too dark for my purposes. So again, you'll find a lot of stuff, but you're going to have to be very critical about what you choose. So I kept looking. And I found this one. All right. This one was likely going to be a keeper. It says so much to me as it relates to the interpretation of my character. Here, the protection is represented in a very gentle manner with these two hands, right? They're just cupping this dandelion that is so delicate and fragile and is being lit by the sun, which to me all speaks about life. Okay, this is kind of an abstraction of life, and someone is protecting this life. Now, when I saw this image, I very quickly thought of the idea of a nest due to the softness and roundness of the hands and this notion of feeling encircled, feeling protected, feeling wrapped. And you can see now that I'm starting to move from a very abstract image about protection and safety and enclosure into one that's slightly more structural. So my next goal is to keep moving toward these things that are more human made or made even by nature. I eventually found these two images. The first one is the piazza in front of St. Peter's in Rome. And I remembered from my history that the designer specifically used Christ's outreached hands as a metaphor for this structure. The idea was that Christ was reaching out from the church, which is just out of view, it's right here. Christ was reaching out to the people of Rome to invite them into the church. Okay, so again, there's this kind of wrapping, this sense of enclosure. But notice it's not a hard circle because the hands and the nest didn't give me a hard geometry. So I found something that's a little bit more elliptical. And then I found this image, which was this library. I don't know much more about it, but it says so much about, the softness of the type of space that I want. It's got that enclosure, that kind of nested feeling. It's got a sense of natural materials. All of these things are really starting to kind of work and say, yeah, this is going in a good kind of direction. So here I have kind of a finished set of images, and this is kind of important. One, you want to make sure that you're reminding yourself and telling other people who look at this packet that a descriptive phrase that you're seeing for your finished product is a place to be protected. And some words that start to help create the feeling and also the visuals of what that might look like are embrace, safe, and wrap. And I have placed them so that they go from the very abstract to the very kind of architectural. Now, the idea isn't that this is my finished design. Not at all. It's just there's something about this. There's a design language that's developing that's really starting to work towards my goals. But clearly, I don't want to copy this because that's not what we do as designers. You will notice on the instructions for Phase 3, I talk about critical selection. It is important that your final board is cohesive and presents a general sense of atmosphere. You will likely not complete any given row, okay, with all of its images, and then just go on to the next set of words. I started to find images, for example, for other words that were accurate to the word, and I liked them, but they didn't fit with the visual story or design language that was developing. So I had to throw out or discard some really good images because, they came in and they just didn't fit visually. Be very cognizant of this. You may have to make some strategic shifts in image selection as the board builds. And so some of the themes from my board, as you can see, that just started to develop are nature, soft forms, light, natural materials, and even line, where we start to see the line here in the trees, the line here in the rays of light, the line even here in the structure and the way the lights hang. So be very aware of that. About this. The board needs to work as a whole. Now, avoid being matchy-matchy. So don't restrict yourself to the point where you start to say, oh, all of my images have to be blue and green, or red and orange, or of nature, or all have light. Don't restrict yourself that much because then you're not going to have a whole lot of information to kind of go on. Let it start to build and let it start to flow, but still have some good variety. Now, so this is an example of what your concept board might look like. I'm going to ask you to do 3 to 5 groupings, okay? So we'll call this a grouping of words, okay? So that's a grouping of a phrase with words. And each one has to have 4 images. That's the requirement. I've done mine in a very simple grid. If you want to do some other type of a layout, that's fine. It just has to be clear, how the words relate to the images and that it's a good composition as a whole. The concept board is due Sunday, March 13th by 11 p.m. via Teams. Please be aware of this date. It is the Sunday right after we get back from spring break, so that can creep up on you. But I thought this was a project, if you wanted to start over spring break, it could be a fun distraction while you're sitting in a car or on a plane or in an airport, because you're getting to look for images and just start compiling them. But nonetheless, the due date is March 13th. As always, feel free to ask questions via Teams chat, drop by my office, or send me an email. I'm always happy to talk about the assignment. I will also respond to questions at the beginning of class on February 25th. So you'll notice I'm asking you to view this video before you turn in Phase 2C, but you're well on your way for that. And I also wanted to do it before you go on to spring break. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Good luck, and I will see you on the other side of spring break.